Thank you for being here, seriously, and only if this story truly resonates with you. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now, because this whole thing still doesn't feel real to me. I walked into my own house and found my fiancé with my best friend, and somehow that wasn't even the part that hurt the most, because what came out of her mouth next, that's what broke something in me for good. I'm Marcus, I'm 31, and up until a few weeks ago I thought my life was finally settling down. I bought my house on my own about 3 years ago, nothing crazy, just a clean 2-story place about 1,800 square feet, quiet neighborhood, the kind of place you picture building a future in. And when Emily came into my life, it felt like everything just clicked. She moved in last year. We got engaged 6 months later, and yeah, I really thought that was it for me, like I was done searching. And Jason, he'd been my best friend since college, the kind of guy who knew everything about me, the kind of guy you trust without thinking twice. He was around all the time, barbecues, game nights, random drop-ins. I never questioned it, not once. Looking back, there were small things, like Emily asking weird questions about the house, about whose name was on what, about what would happen if something ever changed, and I remember laughing it off, saying, "Relax, we're getting married. It's all ours anyway." And she just smiled in this way I didn't really understand at the time. And Jason started texting her more, little jokes, little inside comments. Nothing that felt big enough to call out. Just enough that if you noticed it, you'd feel a little off. But I didn't want to be that guy. I trusted them. I trusted both of them. The day everything fell apart started completely normal. I got off work early, like 2 hours ahead of schedule. And I remember thinking I'd surprise her, maybe pick up dinner, just have a quiet night in. Nothing dramatic, nothing special, just normal. And that's the part that still messes with me, because when I pulled into the driveway, Jason's car was already there. And for a second, I just stood there, keys in my hand, this weird feeling in my chest, like something wasn't lining up, and I told myself I was overthinking it. But I wasn't, not even close, and the moment I opened that front door, I realized there was something going on in my house that I had completely missed the entire time. I stepped inside and everything felt off, not loud, not chaotic, just wrong in a quiet way. Like when you walk into a place and you know something has shifted but you cannot explain it yet. I heard voices upstairs, low, casual, like nothing was out of place, and that hit me harder than anything, because it sounded normal, like they were comfortable, like this had been happening for a while. And I remember just standing there at the bottom of the stairs, listening, trying to make sense of it, without jumping to conclusions, because part of me still wanted to believe there was some harmless explanation. But then I heard Emily laugh, that same laugh she used when she was relaxed, when she felt safe, and it did not belong in that moment, not with him in my house when I was not supposed to be there. I walked up slowly, not rushing, not making noise, and the closer I got, the more I noticed little things. Jason's shoes by the door like he had been there for hours, his jacket on the chair, not tossed, but placed, like he was at home. And that detail stuck with me because Jason had never acted like that before. He always asked, always checked in, but this time he did not. And I started thinking about all the times he had been over recently, all the times Emily told me she was just hanging out or keeping busy. And suddenly those moments did not feel so random anymore. When I reached the top of the stairs, their voices stopped for a second, like they heard something, and then I heard Emily say quietly, "It is probably nothing." And that sentence, that was the moment something in me shifted, because she was not expecting me. She was comfortable enough to dismiss any noise, and that told me more than anything else could. So I stepped forward and pushed the door open. They both froze, just looked at me, and there was this long silence where nobody said anything, no scrambling, no excuses. Just silence. And I remember thinking how strange it was that the room looked exactly the same as always. Same bed, same dresser, same framed photo of us on the nightstand. But everything felt different now, like it did not belong to me anymore. Emily was the first to speak, not panicked, not even embarrassed, just calm, almost annoyed. And she said, "You are home early." Like that was the problem. Like I had interrupted something I was not supposed to see. And Jason would not even look at me. Just stared at the floor like he was waiting for this to pass. And I realized right then this was not a mistake. This was not a one-time thing. This was something they had already decided was okay. And for the first time since I walked in, I stopped feeling confused. I stopped trying to understand. And instead I felt something settle in, something colder, something clearer, because whatever this was, I was done being the last person to see it. Jason finally spoke, but not to me. He looked at Emily first like he was waiting for permission, and that alone told me everything I needed to know about how long this had been going on. Then he said, "Man, it is not what it looks like." And I remember just nodding slowly because that line felt almost scripted, like something you say when you have said it before, and I asked him, "Then what is it?" And he had nothing, just silence again, and Emily stepped in right away, almost cutting him off. "We were going to tell you," she said, calm, controlled, like this was a conversation she had already rehearsed, and that word, "we," hit harder than anything else, because it meant they were already on the same side, and I was not part of that anymore. I asked her how long. Just that. Nothing dramatic. Just how long. And she hesitated for half a second, not because she was thinking, but because she was choosing what version of the truth to give me. And that was when I noticed her phone on the nightstand, screen lighting up with a notification, Jason's name on it, and I picked it up before she could react. And there it was, weeks of messages, not hidden, not even careful. Just right there like they did not think I would ever see it. Messages about meeting up when I was at work, jokes about our house, plans, complaints about me, and one line that stuck in my head more than anything. "He is never going to question it. He trusts us too much." And I just stared at that sentence because it was not anger I felt in that moment. It was something heavier, like realization settling in piece by piece. Emily tried to take the phone back, saying, "You are invading my privacy." And I actually laughed at that. I could not help it, because the idea of privacy in that moment felt almost insulting. And I asked her again, "How long?" And this time she did not dodge it. She said, "A few months," like it was nothing, like it was a detail, not a betrayal. And then she added, "It just happened." And Jason nodded like that explained everything. I remember looking around the room again, at the bed, at the photos, at the life I thought we were building, and it all felt staged now, like I had been living inside something that was already broken without knowing it. And that was the moment everything finally snapped into place, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, undeniable collapse of everything I thought was real. Emily did not cry the way I expected, not at first. Instead, she followed me downstairs like this was still something we could talk through, like it was just another argument we could fix if she said the right things. She kept saying, "Marcus, please, just listen," over and over again while I grabbed my keys and my wallet, and I told her I needed space, that I could not stay there, not like that. And she switched instantly, her voice changed, softer, almost careful. "You are overreacting," she said, like I was the one breaking something that could have been saved. And that was the first time I felt that shift, that strange mix of anger and clarity, because she was not trying to fix what she did, she was trying to control how I reacted to it. I left the house and sat in my car for almost 20 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel, my phone buzzing nonstop, her name lighting up the screen again and again, calls, texts, even voice messages, and at first I ignored all of it. But then I made the mistake of listening to one, and she was crying now, saying things like, "I made a mistake, and you cannot just throw everything away." And then she said something that stuck with me, something that did not sound like regret at all. She said, "We built a life together." And I remember thinking, no, I built this, I paid for this, I carried this, and you were just there. I tried to call Jason once, just once, not because I wanted to fix anything, but because I needed to hear something real from him, anything that made sense, but it went straight to voicemail. And a few seconds later I got a text, just 3 words, "I am sorry, man." And nothing else, no explanation, no accountability, just that, like it was enough to close everything that had just happened. That night I stayed at a cheap motel off the highway. Nothing special, maybe $80 a night. The kind of place where the walls are thin and the air conditioner rattles. And I sat on that bed scrolling through old photos, old messages, trying to figure out when things changed, when I missed it, when I became the guy who trusted the wrong people in his own home. And I almost called her back, more than once, just to ask why, just to hear her say something that made it make sense. But every time I picked up the phone, I remembered that message, "He is never going to question it." And something in me stopped. By the next morning, the calls kept coming, the texts got longer, more desperate. Even an email with the subject line, "Please let us talk." Like this was still a conversation. Like this was still negotiable. And I realized then that nothing she was saying was about what she did. It was about what she was about to lose. And that was the moment I stopped thinking about fixing anything and started thinking about what I needed to do next. The next few days were quiet in a way that felt almost unreal, like the world had moved on, but I was still catching up. I went back to the house during the day while she was out, packed a small bag, grabbed important documents, and left without touching anything else. I did not argue. I did not explain. I just created distance. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt in control of something, even if it was just my own space. I called a lawyer that same week. Nothing dramatic, just a calm conversation in a small office downtown. And I remember sliding the paperwork across his desk, the deed, the purchase records, everything in my name. And he looked through it, nodded once, and said, "You are fine." Just like that, simple, clear, no hesitation. And that sentence stayed with me because it was the first time someone confirmed what I already knew deep down, that I had not lost everything, that I was not about to be taken advantage of, and that gave me something solid to stand on. I focused on work after that, longer hours, fewer distractions, just showing up every day and doing what needed to be done, not to prove anything to anyone else, but because I needed to rebuild something for myself, and slowly things started to shift. I got put in charge of a new project, something bigger than anything I had handled before, and a few weeks later, my name was printed on a new badge, Project Lead. Simple black letters on a white background, clipped to my shirt, but it meant something. It was a reminder that I was still moving forward, still building, still in control of my own life. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, stopped reading her messages, stopped wondering what they were doing, because none of that changed anything, and the more I focused on what was in front of me, the less power everything behind me had. And that was not something that happened overnight. It was small, quiet steps, choosing not to respond, choosing not to go back, choosing to let it be over. And then, a few weeks later, I found myself standing in front of my own front door again, keys in my hand, the same house, the same place where everything fell apart, except this time it felt different, quieter, clearer, like I was not walking into something uncertain anymore, but stepping back into something I actually owned. And as I stood there for a second, I realized this was the moment everything connected back to where it started, because what happened next, inside that house, that was where she said something I will never forget. Life feels quieter now, not perfect, not completely healed, but clearer in a way I did not have before. I sleep better, I think straighter, and when I walk through my house, it actually feels like mine again, not something shared, not something uncertain, just mine, and that matters more than I expected it would. When I opened that door that day, Emily was already there, sitting at the kitchen table like she belonged, like nothing had really changed, and she looked at me and said, calm as ever, "We need to talk about the house." And I just stood there for a second, not surprised, not angry, just done, and I told her, "There is nothing to talk about." But she kept going, saying things about fairness, about time invested, about how she deserved something for everything she had put into this, and it was strange hearing it out loud, because for the first time, I could see it clearly. It was never about us. It was about what she thought she could take. I told her I had already spoken to a lawyer, that everything was in my name, that there was no claim, and she went quiet for a moment, not shocked, just calculating, and then she said, softer this time, "So that is it? After everything?" And I nodded, because yes, that was it. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, just because I finally understood where the line was, and I was not going to let anyone cross it again. She left without saying much after that, just grabbed a bag and walked out. And there was no big scene, no dramatic ending, just the sound of the door closing, and for a second I stood there in the silence, the kind that feels heavy but also honest, and I walked over to the front door, locked it, and changed the code on the keypad. Simple, practical, but it felt like more than that, like I was closing something properly for the first time. I do not think what happened made me stronger overnight, and I do not think I came out of it untouched, but I learned something I should have known earlier, that trust without boundaries is not strength, it is risk, and that you can care about someone and still choose yourself when they show you who they really are. If you are listening to this and you feel like something in your life is off, like you are holding on to something that is quietly breaking you, you are not wrong for noticing it, and you are not weak for walking away from it. Sometimes the hardest thing is not losing people. It is accepting who they turned out to be. Thank you for staying with me through this, really, because telling it out loud makes it feel a little less heavy. And if any part of this felt familiar to you, you are not alone in that. If you want to share where you are listening from or what time it is for you right now, I would love to read it. It reminds me how far these stories travel. And if this story meant something to you, feel free to leave a comment, share it, or subscribe. It helps more than you think. There are more stories like this, real ones, messy ones, the kind that stay with you a little longer. And if you are curious about what else is out there, you might want to check the next one in the playlist, because sometimes the next story hits even closer than you expect.